everyone's here for your draft knowledge, your expertise, particularly on the 2025 draft class. I just recently watched your big board, which I think you dropped maybe 3 to 5 days ago. So everyone should definitely go check that out. I'm going to put my hand up. Second round, I'm not that across it, so I'm going to rely on yourself. That's why I brought you on. Who are your 5 players around the mark of pick 37 that you could see fitting in nicely with the Pistons, with their current roster?
Yeah, so I think the Pistons are in a pretty interesting spot now. Like you kind of have at least an idea of what success looks like, being able to get to the playoffs, be competitive with a team like the Knicks, and find a formula that works even through not making a ton of changes to the roster. Obviously, you add Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway, those guys, Tobias Harris. It makes a world of a difference just in terms of spacing the floor. So for me, I think just continuing to go in that direction in terms of bringing shooting, defense, and maybe a little bit more size in the front court. So I think you could go in a variety of directions with that. The first guy I would put in that sort of range at 37 is kind of a little bit difficult to predict who is exactly going to end up being there. But I would say somebody like Janai Broome from Auburn. He may not have the most textbook NBA, gifts in terms of length and athleticism, but his production over his career at Auburn, his ability to, affect the game in multiple ways, his positioning on defense, and just kind of be that backup 4 or 5 guy who can come in, potentially space the floor, make plays in a variety of ways. I think he would make a lot of sense for them as a rotation piece and somebody who could, complement the likes of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and all the other guys, Asar Thompson, in the future. Some other guys I think would also make some sense would be Chaz Lanier and Kobe Brea as just straight up shooters. Lanier is a little bit more talented in the creation department for himself, a little bit more physical, I would say, as well. But Kobe Brea has had a heck of a career starting at Dayton, shooting over 40% off the catch and off the dribble. Just somebody who you can tell is going to shoot it at a high clip. He may have to work on some other things in terms of passing, creation, those types of things. But you put him in a situation like this, being able to play off of the creators there, and I think that he's going to have a lot of success in the NBA just because he has an elite skill and has the opportunity to play as a role player. I would also put Tyrese Proctor in this mix as well. I know, the Pistons have gotten guards recently in recent drafts, but I think what Proctor brings as a bigger guard who can, he's shown that he can play a variety of roles. He did that at Duke. He started out as more of a creator, somebody who was playing more of a pure point guard role and evolved into a 40% three-point shooter on a Final Four team, somebody who defends, can make those connected plays. I think he makes a lot of sense for most teams, especially in that early second round range, but especially this Pistons one, who I think can still use, some juice in the creation department because, Cade had a lot of responsibility this year. And then I'd also throw somebody like Alex Tui in that mix as well, as a guy who, I'm sure you're familiar with, playing in the NBL, being from Australia, somebody who's just like a Swiss Army knife in a lot of ways. Improved as a shooter this year, can slide his feet, has gotten better on that end of the floor as well. Big time shot creation moments as well over these last couple years. I'm just kind of evolving, but I think that he fits in a lot of different spaces, played well at the combine. He'd be another guy who I would throw in that mix as well.
No, I love all those names, and I know Broome and Lanier are 2 guys that I'm pretty sure I've actually already worked out with the Pistons. And I was going to ask you about the Australians because the other one there not mentioned, who I don't think made your top 60, was Rocco, but I'll ask about him later. I want to focus on Proctor and Tui just first. Tui's an interesting one. So the year I worked at the NBL was his first season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he started a lot of games for Sydney off the top of my head, but he was a huge improver of all that next star crop in the past season. And I think he's kind of a guy I think you described in one of your videos. Like he doesn't have necessarily a standout skill, but at 6'8", decent athleticism, probably just slightly above average. And he's pretty strong. Like he's a guy who, I mean, wings that have shooting potential are going to be valuable anywhere. So he's definitely a player I would like to see the Pistons pick up. And then Tyrese Proctor, I remember, so you'll know more about this than me. I remember watching him when he was playing in the NBL 1. This maybe was in 2021, 2022. He's playing for like this, I can't remember what it's called, but they play in our NBL 1 division here. And I feel like, was he meant to initially be like a lottery pick? And that probably was when like he was seen as more as that on-ball guy. But could you just talk to me a little bit about like him maybe on the defensive side of the ball and maybe his shot, if that's developed at all in his, I think is he 3 seasons at Duke?
Yeah, he played 3 seasons at Duke. And initially, yeah, the pitch for him was kind of more on the creation side and being able to, set the table, get stuff for himself as well. And he had like lottery potential as a guy who I believe went to college a year earlier ahead of schedule than he was initially supposed to play with Derek Lively and those guys out at Duke. But yeah, I think, for him, he had at least some significant late first round, early second round buzz that freshman year going one and done, especially how he finished that season. Had a pretty rocky start to that year, but he finished really strong. And I think, for him, it was just more about becoming more consistent and finding a spot that makes a lot of sense for him. And the shot was a big part of that, being able to knock down threes at a higher clip, shooting around 40%. And defensively, I like him quite a bit. I think that he has the potential to be at least above average in the NBA as we saw him start to lean into that more. He was, a positive piece at the point of attack, somebody who understands team defense principles, played on some really good defensive teams over his career, and was never a weak link, has good size to be able to guard, a few wings, but, stay more in the backcourt. But yeah, I think that he just checks a lot of boxes. And even though like there were some games where you would still ask, where is he at in terms of like being able to, go get his own, or, he had certain times where he didn't show up in the biggest moments. But I still think you look at him as a young player who has a lot of tools and somebody that can contribute.
Yeah, no, I really like the idea of him being more of that off-ball guard that you could put alongside JI or Cade, especially if the jumper continues to grow and improve. Because is he around 6'5", 6'6", or maybe something like that? Definitely in shoes, I feel. So that's something you definitely need alongside Ivy. And look, what I'm talking about Proctor as long-term being a rotational piece, like not a starter. This is not for you, it's for Pistons fans watching this. But I think that could be, one of the needs they probably need more long-term is that backup point guard or just backup combo guard. They have Marcus Sasser, but he's more definitely shot first and a little bit undersized, even though I like Sass. So those are 2 names in the Australians I'm very interested in. I just want to get your quick thoughts on Rocco Zikarsky. This isn't really Pistons related, but for fans watching, Pistons do need some size. I'm going to ask about some other prospects in a minute, but Rocco is 7'3". His first season as well, I was at the NBL, and he was, very high hopes. He was okay in his first season, but he was only 17. Then last season, it just didn't really work out. But I will say Brisbane, the team he was on, was in a weird position because their coach really needed to make the finals or his job was on the line. So playing an 18-year-old big didn't necessarily fit, but Rocco also didn't show a lot. But what were your thoughts on him overall as a prospect? Because I know before the season, he was still highly touted, I believe, before the cycle started.
Yeah, I was pretty high on him coming into the season, like you kind of mentioned, how he played as a 17-year-old in the NBL. Just his ability to protect the rim, finish plays, do a little bit in terms of playmaking and operating as a hub. And also, obviously, at that size, he's not moving like Evan Mobley or Bam Adebayo, but relatively speaking, he moves pretty well, given he is 7'3" barefoot. So I think coming into the season, there was a lot of hope there. he has some injuries that kind of worried me. And like you mentioned, he wasn't able to produce as consistently, and things just didn't come together all the way. And I guess he still has the opportunity to not be in this draft if for a few more days, or I guess about a week or so. But I still think like I believe he was on my last big board. He was in the top 60, I think. If I didn't make a mistake or something. But the pitch for him is still there. Like, he's a young guy who, as long as the health checks out, he's going to have an opportunity to, have a role and come in and contribute in that way. And I think for the Pistons, maybe not at 37, at least for me, I think there'd be other options there. But if you buy a pick in the second and he's still available, or for some reason, he goes undrafted or something, I think he'd be perfect as a long-term play, somebody who you can kind of bring along and potentially have as a backup five, or somebody who can come in and play minutes and contribute there. So I definitely still think that he has a shot at contributing. Again, like, you can't teach being 7'4" with shoes on and his movement and solid touch and those types of things. And we saw him operate at a high level, go toe to toe with somebody like Alex Sarr in his minutes in that first NBL season. So I still think he's got a clear opportunity.
Yeah, it's really, I find him so intriguing because for us here in Australia, he was this huge hope for us. Like, our national team's actually, like, we're happy with where it is, but Rocco was like, we've had like Bogut, Baines, just some centers in the past. So just to see him kind of slide this season was interesting.